But look, I didn't really connect with the going to church. Right now, look, I'm not going to say I don't believe in God or I'm atheist or anything. I just don't go to church. Do I believe in a higher being? Yes. But more importantly, do I believe in being a good person?
Yeah.
And in my heart, like in my soul, I try to be the best possible person I can be. To me, that's my form of religion, right? My church is going on my boat on Sundays and spending my time in nature.
So I think, like, in general, you guys both hit the nail on the head. If it is having a positive impact on the people who are practicing it, the religion or the belief is having its intended effect.
It is.
Ayahuasca, usually and that's just from what I've read, it's known to have the most positive impacts on people in like smaller ceremonies, right? Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Only Lawsuits podcast, where we discuss lawsuits going on around the country and how they tie into pop culture. Today, we have a very, very special guest, Greg Lake. Greg, why don't you go on and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I guess my proper name's George Gregory Lake, but everybody calls me Greg. So if you know me, if you see me on this podcast, call me Greg. Yeah, I'm a attorney and trial lawyer. I live here in Florida, but licensed in Texas, but really litigate all across the country in state and federal court. But yeah, here today to talk about entheogens, plant medicines, ayahuasca, things of that nature.
Yeah. Greg and I actually met while I was handling a case for a client over here in Orlando, Soul Quest case, pretty big case. Met Greg after the case, and super intelligent guy on the issue of plant medicine, what some people consider controlled substances or drugs and their use in like religious activities. It was amazing to understand a different side.
I mean, that's a great segue. So people are very, very familiar with weed. They've become a lot more familiar with the usage of mushrooms. Mm-hmm. And now controlled substance like ayahuasca has now come to the forefront. Greg, can you explain to everybody what ayahuasca is?
Yeah, so ayahuasca, and I'm going to explain specifically what that is and then just draw back and generally paint a picture of kind of the, legally what that's in. But ayahuasca is what we would call a brew made of two different plants. One of them, both of them grow in South America. Some of them grow up here, but it's usually some type of DMT containing plant. Dimethyltryptamine, which is a controlled substance on Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act.
And just clarify what a controlled substance is.
Yeah, so a controlled substance, when we refer to it, generally refers to a substance that is in some way restricted in its use, possession, distribution by the law. Gotcha. Which would be, like you said earlier, drugs. Drugs are bad. That's generally what we're speaking about. But anyways, do you want me to go back to talking about the ayahuasca?
Okay.
Yeah. So the ayahuasca, again, you got a DMT containing plant, and just so you know, DMT is very, very ubiquitous in nature and found in many, 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 many plant species. But anyways,
it's like mushrooms, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, and there's a couple different species of plant that are specifically because the shamans in the South American jungle where it was originated, it's been a sacrament there for like 3,000 years that they know of, but believe it's much longer. But, usually a DMT containing plant that they built a relationship with, and then its namesake, the ayahuasca vine.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Explain, obviously when we met, you were super knowledgeable about how like different churches and religions use ayahuasca to have that like connection, right?
Yep.
Talk to me about that. How, in your experience in handling, different cases, and we don't need to talk case specifics, what do you see? Do you see people that kind of like fake it because they just want to use ayahuasca or a DMT?
That's a good question. Do I see people who fake it? It's kind of rare, and I tell you why that is because of the nature of the experience.
Yeah.
As told by the scientific medical record, it states that, for instance, with psilocybin, 70 to 80% are people who take it, even in a clinical setting, what we consider a highly quote unquote secularized setting. 78% of people are having primary religious mystical experiences of like the highest order.
Yeah.
In these places, and that's why I say there's not a lot of people who fake it, because once you have a breakthrough experience like that, there's really no going back. You can't, it's so real, you can't deny it, and so you're stuck with that, and so that's why I say people don't fake it. Usually they've had an experience with something that's completely changed their life. One
of the things that I experienced, right, when we were handling the SoulQuest case, I was representing the property owner that the church was renting the lot from. Essentially, I didn't understand it, right? And I'm a plaintiff's lawyer, and and I was playing defense on this one. But one of the things that we had to really struggle with in the beginning was how to pick a jury. And because not many people, including myself, understood the fact and was able to like accurately distinguish whether or not this is just some sort of, hey, I want to, trip out on mushrooms, or whether or not. And the weird thing is like you tend to see in trial, from everything I've seen in trials, you want to pick a jury that's going to be most favorable to you. Well, number one, we were representing kind of the church, which is like, okay, do we go conservative? But then again, conservative leaning people are anti-drugs. Yeah. So this whole, like, in a legal sense, it was very complex to litigate this case. Yeah. Especially when you're dealing with, damages for a wrongful death action. You're either going to get people that are going to say, hey, like these people are just a bunch of, drug addicts, or you have to really like understand and explain what Greg was talking about, that, hey, this is a legitimate religious use.
It has been for, again, I think a lot of very credible anthropology and archaeology and historical work's been done to show that like this is actually much more ancient than we would ever even know.
So I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind, because when you think about how weed broke through public perception barriers to become legalized and now to be a taxable substance, and now mushrooms has done the same thing, at least specifically for Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. Greg, like, what do you think? I mean, what's your perspective on ayahuasca and what it would take to have that same breakthrough for the general public?
Plant medicine in general.
Plant medicine in general.
So you're saying for just like general use, like people just doing whatever they want with it?
Yeah, because I think when people think about ayahuasca now and they think about like the trip portion of it, it's tied into what people are also experiencing with mushrooms in some sense,
they're going
right?
to. It's the same molecules in there to a large degree.
Yeah,
they're all just kind of branches of each other.
But I think like the broader topic too is that for some people it becomes a way higher ask because of the shaman portion of it.
Like I'm just going to go back again to the science and the medicine. I mean, statistically, we're saying people are having religious, whether they intend to or not, it doesn't matter. Like even your doctor's office, you're having them, and I'd venture to tell someone, go to your doctor's office, take you a sufficient dose of dimethyltryptamine, smoke it, whatever. Yeah, trust me, you're going to have a religious experience in that doctor's office, And so it's like, they're really, to me, and in what I do, and this is also my personal life tied into it, to me, it already is legal because I use it religiously, spiritually, and I guess I went back to the medical science because I think that no matter what we place on that or like title we give that, it doesn't matter. The majority of people are going to lead back to the original. I've had a religious spiritual experience with this and, it changed my life. Therefore, I look at this differently with more reverence and things of that nature. Yeah.
See, a weird aspect of it, I think, is we say religious, right?
Yeah.
The connotation of religion, it polarizes people.
It does.
But here's the crazy thing. People don't realize there's a lot of religions out there. For instance, there's something about a spaghetti monster.
Dude.
But it like literally, if they really believe in the spaghetti monster, I don't know shit about the spaghetti monster.
Yeah.
But
is that a real thing?
I believe it
Church
is.
of the Spaghetti Monster. Look, I'll tell you, man.
And listen, he knows this.
I wrote
The pasta parties must be great.
just so everybody knows, I wrote a 325-page legal treatise on this question of how have we defined religion under the First Amendment, and really took a look at the academic work being done on that, and putting that together, because we don't have a huge record of them defining religion, one, and then even thinner as it relates to these specific types of religions.
Yeah.
So there's very little court material, but we have a ton of academic work, because I've done a lot of federal court litigation where experts rule the day. If you have the top expert in something come testify to it in court, it's you more likely than not are going to win that issue, that point. And so I just took a look at all of it, and then I, knew what the court's analysis is, and but back to the defining it, it's, you're trying to really define a very, very dense topic, and you really can't. And all the experts say that really the definition of religion evolves over time.
And it's such a personalized thing.
It is.
Because look, growing up, I was raised, Christian.
Yeah.
I was raised, we used to go to church.
Me too. Same.
But look, I didn't really connect with the going to church. Right now, look, I'm not going to say I don't believe in God or I'm, atheist or anything. I just don't go to church. Do I believe in a higher being? Yes. But more importantly, do I believe in being a good person?
Yeah.
And in my heart, like in my soul, I try to be the best possible person I can be. Mm-hmm. To me, that's my form of religion, right? My church is going on my boat on Sundays and spending my time in nature. That's my form of religion. That's what brings peace and serenity to my life, right?
Yeah, so I've kind of pared it down, and really the way I look at something and determine whether it's religion or not really is probably this. We all have questions in life. A lot of them are overarching. What's the nature of reality, life and death, these things, right? And then we have specific problems that we run into walking our path every day, kind of like Native Americans. It's our way. But for me, it's whatever you use or whatever practice you engage in to get those answers to help motivate you or guide you in one direction or another. That's really religion to me. When we talk about religious practice, at least, you know what I mean? It's like, what is that thing that you do outwardly that helps you answer questions that we all, I think, have a right to have answers to? And to the extent that we're being peaceful and safe and not harming other people, like, we should have the right to engage in any law notwithstanding.
Yeah.
So I've known quite a few people on the West Coast that have gone on the shaman walks and have done ayahuasca, and they've come out of those experiences with a very, very positive light to shine on them. Yeah. So I think, like, in general, you guys both hit the nail on the head. If it is having a positive impact on the people who are practicing it, the religion or the belief is having its intended effect.
It is.
Dude, during the trial, I swear to God,
I should have come to that. Now I think about it. I didn't even think about that at the time to come and watch y'all tee off over there.
During that trial, I'll tell you, man, initially I went in and I literally said, like, this is just some crazy shit.
Yeah, I bet you did, man.
But at the end of it, when you hear people sit down and give testimony about how veterans, it's helped them with their PTSD. There was someone that was an alcoholic for many years, literally cold turkey the next day, like after their experience with this medicine. It really did make me honestly believe, and I think it made a lot of the one thing I do believe the jury definitely was convinced of. This is a real concept. It's definitely not bullshit.
That's good to hear that.
Yeah. So and look, and I scrutinize everything. Mm-hmm. Like I don't do any sort of drugs.
I can tell.
I barely drink, right? You know what I'm saying? I believe in just running straight edge and narrow. But the craziest thing is, like, if you can convince someone like me, and I can sit here and say, hey, I believe this. Like, I think it's real.
And I think what you're speaking to, Mike, because you're kind of like me, what that substantively looks like for somebody, their religious practice, like, I could really care less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, as long as we're being peaceful and safe. But you still are analyzing the situation kind of outside that context, and what you're speaking to is their sincerity.
Yeah.
You're saying, I could, you're doing your thing, and But I believe you're saying what you're saying, and what you're saying is true, and it helped your life. And
Yeah, exactly.
that would obviously give someone reason to want to keep following that path, I would think.
Listen, I mean, believe me, and I support, like, I don't like the concept of taxes. And, when you start mixing taxes and religious breaks, I think that when you start, when they mix that, right, the whole concept of taxes and churches, I think that was the premise to the lack of sincerity in a lot of religions, because realistically, like, look, have I thought about, look, I just said my boat is my church, right? Well, I should go incorporate a nonprofit that says, boat church, and I'll go buy a damn Viking yacht, and that's my place of worship. Should I be taxed on that?
You have a good argument there. And just so everybody knows, is that you're automatically tax exempt as a church under the federal code just by the nature of your what you're doing. That's a good thing, but like you say, it could have elements of abuse also that people are. But to be honest with you, not many people understand the tax exempt status of churches.
Kanye did. Remember the year before he opened his church, Kanye was talking about how broke he was, how little money he had. And then the year after, he did an interview saying, man, like, God is so good. I have so much money. And it was because he opened a church.
Listen, man.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He did a whole album.
He did a whole album. He opened a church. Yeah.
Bro, the one thing, it's funny you bring him up. Kanye, as crazy as he is, he's a god genius.
Yeah, I could tell. I mean, literally, he's got some wits to him for sure, because he's slick.
Dude, if you want to know what really, so there's a few things in Kanye's life that have made me realize he's low-key a genius. Number one was when he wrote that song, Lift Yourself. Literally, the lyrics of the songs were like, scoopity poop, doopity doop, poopity poop. And literally, I'm like, yo, this is the dumbest shit ever, but it is fire. And it made people talk about him. So that was number one.
Yeah.
The next one is just when he did the church, but the thing that really solidified it for me was the Super Bowl ad. The Super Bowl ad that he shot with his cell phone, and literally goes, what did he say? I spent all my money on or something like that, and I only spent $0 on this ad. And it literally was him like, go to www.yeezy.com. Everything was $20. He literally sold out a bunch of shit. I bought a bunch of shit from Kanye because of that ad.
Damn.
But like, literally, he sold out. Now all his merchandise is sold out. He was selling it for $20, like, for shoes and shit. And I'm like, yo, he's a genius. Yeah. Because at that point, it's just volume.
Yeah, because right? you probably already have it stateside ready to go shipped out. You got your team ready. Like, it's just a matter of plugging away and getting it done.
I would say Kanye is very similar to Trump in the sense that they are very good at breaking out of what pop culture can deem as cancellation behavior. Because with all of the stuff that he's found himself involved in, all of the controversies that that surrounds Kanye. I mean, even Trump as well. They're like untouchable.
Yeah. Well, the reason I think that is because he does not rely on others. He owns his stuff. Like, literally, he just did a concert in China. I mean, I don't know this with certainty, but I guarantee you he didn't have a company booking that concert. He went and did it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And he's keeping control of his empire.
That's the name of the game. I'll say this, in the music industry, it's like, get to the point where you can own some, most, if not all, of your royalty rights. That's how they bring
I think the thing that I just respect about him is that there's no filter. So much of like, the public consciousness, like so much of like celebrity culture is having a filter, not being very transparent about the way that you feel, not being honest, like, to yourself, because like, you're really just trying to sell a product to people, whether that's clothing, whether that's music. And he just speaks what's on his mind all the time.
Well, I'll tell you, and I've kind of, to be honest with you, back like the area of law that I practiced in, there's a lot of the lawyers that work in this space are scared. They're scared of the government, man, and they're scared of getting arrested and things of this nature. And, it kind of just took me, it didn't take me long, but like I just plugged away at it, and I feel so confident in it's all I've done for 5 years, that it doesn't bother me. And in that, it's like you break through this space where it's like you've shown the universe that you can put fear or trepidation and all this stuff aside, and to get stuff done in the name of trying to do good. And man, it's incredible. But yeah, I think it's a lot of it goes back to what you're saying about Kanye and them. It's like they reach this level where they can just like say anything,
Well, I think it's goes back to the bare bone concept of sincerity.
Yep.
Look, the reason why you can practice against the federal government, a government agency like the federal courts, where in criminal cases 90% of the time they can get convictions, or worse, they use the machine against you to force you to just give. Because listen, when you're facing 10, 15, 20 years life in prison for using a controlled substance, or for selling controlled substance in your church, right? To overcome that sort of scrutiny on a national level, and the amount of money that you have to do, the lawyers you have to hire to fight. Not many people can do that. And for you the only reason I feel can do it in my interactions with you and based off our conversation is the fact that you're sincere about your beliefs.
Oh yeah.
Like you don't make this shit up. No, that's the way I feel.
Yeah. Man, I tell you, you're right. It's, and that's, I work with these on a religious basis too. And, I've done quite a few of them, and it's just you have these experiences where your ego's completely knocked out and you are interconnected with all creation, and it's like you're like, oh my god, like it's what the research calls ineffability. These experiences are direct and primary to the source, man, to where like when you get close enough to the sacred, you can't tell someone what that's like. It's beyond description. That's how when people tell you about their experience, it's direct to the divine or the source or whatever you can get is where you stop being able to explain it.
Yeah. And one of the things, like, that's honestly one of the reasons why I really did enjoy meeting Greg, is because him and I are actually working on projects together with different clients. And one of the big things is like, look, he understands, he's sincere about his beliefs. He understands the law. He understands the religious components to it. One of the things we understand is, property owner liability and defending people that own properties that choose to host these religions that do that. And that's what we're working on, is figuring out a way to legitimately present a case to the government to show, hey, we are a legitimate church. We sincerely believe in this. That's Greg. What I do is I say, listen, they are a legitimate organization and they want to use my client's property to engage in their beliefs. Who am I to deny them their First Amendment rights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue, because there was a documentary that came out, or an episodic documentary that came out a few years ago called Unwell. Yeah. And in episode 5, they focus in on ayahuasca. And
that was the Soul Quest case,
and which is also like the Soul Quest case. And Greg and I, before the podcast, we were talking about people's experience with Soul Quest. And the question that I have for you is, ayahuasca usually, and that's just from what I've read, it's known to have the most positive impacts on people in like smaller ceremonies, right? And Soul Quest is an organization that a lot of people was an organization that has a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very, very divisive opinion, because when I scroll through the forums about Soul Quest, a lot of people's first experiences with like these shaman walks with ayahuasca were with Soul Quest.
Yeah.
But you have some people who are saying that their experience was very positive. Some people were saying that it was very negative, and their negative experiences come from the fact that the ceremonies themselves were so large, right? Yep. So Greg, like, what do you think it's going to take, like, based off of your experience, for it to have that breakthrough where you have more people that are opening up places for people to practice ayahuasca?
What's it going to take, or what's it going? To be honest with you, I think that's already happened. You know, as Mike knows, we've talked to people worth over $500 million. You know, we're working with like the absolute upper crust of the world's society. I don't think very long, to be honest with you. I tell people all the time, and I firmly believe it, 5 to 10 years, the sacramental consumption of these substances, what I call entheogens, will be the primary mode of religious practice within this country, religious sect notwithstanding. You know, there's Christian sects that want to adopt mushrooms into their theology and into their practice. I mean, it's spreading like wildfire. The people calling me on a daily basis. And real quick, I'll tell you, I focused on religion because of this, because the more the medical science starts to show that these things are way safer than what was ever been represented, the next line for the government to even have a chance to win one of these cases is on whether they're actually practicing a religion or not. You need to really focus on religion because they said that'll give you the keys to the kingdom. So the first time I ever took psychedelics actually was LSD, and I was real young, 13. You know, I was a drug addict for 17 years. Yeah. So, you know, taking psychedelics and stuff. Now, that did slowly over time go to a level of religious use, right? So when I first started taking mushrooms, you could say it was recreational in a sense, but I could never escape the profundity of them. Meaning that
so let me ask you this. Yeah. So when you consumed them, obviously it brought you to a level
of understanding beyond where I
and obviously, look, you made it through law school. Mm-hmm. You're an educated person. Is that something that like was it in your age, like from a young age, that you just didn't understand that concept of spirituality versus at a later age you did?
No, I think really hitting it on the head is that, you know, I was raised in a Christian household. I mean, we weren't uber religious or anything, but, you know, we would go to church occasionally. All my people were Christian, stuff like that, you know. And so I had that context of this is religion and that's what you do. You know, I didn't ever think that those two concepts could merge through a mushroom. Okay. And so really what I thought at first was that it just like is a mental thing, that it's giving me these really profound insights into some really deep matters, you know? And
you know, what's crazy is, so like when I think of spirituality, right? Like I haven't gone to church in years, but I've thought about it a long time. You know, recently the whole concept behind religion, it's giving you an opportunity to self-reflect, right? When you get down and you kneel and you pray, you know, what is that? You're actually just going through the process of self-reflection.
That's right.
You know, and when I've engaged in certain casework and just dealing with certain aspects of my personal life, you realize self-reflection is actually one of the most important and fundamental things for mental health, right? So at a nutshell, I think the concept, when you're kids, you're told, oh, you got to pray to God so you don't go to hell, right? Yeah. But you don't understand the concept of self-reflection, mental health, and your overall improvement as a person. And I think, you know, what you just said kind of develops that. Look, when you're younger, you can take a mushroom and you go on a quote unquote trip. But when you at a certain age, you realize like it somewhat helps you build your reflection as a person and develop that concept of spirituality. And that's like one thing that I've seen in my development of like, you know, a spiritual, you know, religious sense of being, I guess.
I think that's like a really great outside analysis of it. I have experimented with mushrooms. I've taken them quite a few times.
I didn't know, but I expected it of you.
I could tell. No, I'm just kidding.
My mind is open, you know. But I will say, man, my very, very first experience with it, I did it with my sister and one of her best friends that was visiting, and we drove out to San Pedro, the sunken city of San Pedro, out in Los Angeles. And it was a really, really incredible experience in the sense of looking at the world from a completely new perspective, because everything is opened up. You're looking at like it's really, really hard to explain to someone. It's very, very hard to explain to somebody that hasn't had that type of experience before. but your mind is just on a completely different plane, and like you're just so open and receptive to the surrounding environment. So it was incredible. And one thing that I will say is, for a little while when I was in a really great creative flow, is I used to love to microdose it.
Yep, a lot of people do it.
Yeah, enough where I felt like, you're getting like a little bit of that high, but you're not taking enough of it where the psilocybin is affecting like your day to day.
And if you do it on a good timeline, that tolerance can kind of work too, to where because psilocin, the really active components in the psilocybin mushrooms, you build a tolerance up to it real quick. And this is an argument in favor of religious practice. It's like, if you were to take psilocybin mushrooms today, let's say you took 7 grams, they say pretty much you'd have to take 14 the next day to achieve the same effect, and so on and so on. And so it has this internal abuse deterrent to it, because ultimately, in order for you to ever eat a toxic dose of psilocybin mushrooms, even dried, a human can't consume that much.
Gotcha.
See what I mean? So did you feel unsafe during that experience at any time, or like anything danger was happening?
What's crazy is that when I took it during when we took it early in the afternoon, as we were exploring, and it was incredible. But as you're coming down from it, I think like, you're dealing with like maybe your own insecurities, or like really just your own fears, because as the sun started to set and you had a lot of other bigger groups kind of come in, I feel like you're dealing with other people's energy as well. And it's kind of like being high on a joint, where you get like anxious sometimes, being around like certain crowds of people, looking too deep into it. So that was like the only negative experience that I can say that I had.
And I think that what you just described is a case for why this religious, spiritual, highly curated setting is so important, because you're paying, the person serving the sacrament should know about all this and be paying acute attention to what are we going to be doing at each phase throughout this until it's all. And so, at the time you're describing would be a good time for people to just maybe sit around the fire and self-reflect for a little while.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's actually a good point, because look, at the end of the day, you relate that back to a religious concept. Look, the reason when you go to church and you have a pastor or a priest, they know the word of the Bible or whatever religious document they follow, and that's what they preach off of. They know the flow of that. And I think it's actually, I guess it's important to have someone experienced in handling controlled substances used for religious purposes, because look, you want to know, I want to, if I'm going to engage in this religious activity, even if I'm going to try it, right? Yeah. Say I wanted to go and try ayahuasca. I just don't want to go and buy it from the corner store. No. I want to go with someone experienced that knows, like, so I know what to expect, you know? So I think the concept of the religious use of it is actually the safest use of it.
Let me say this too, and kind of back to ayahuasca, and a lot of these plant medicines, particularly when I say that, I mean like entheogens that can alter consciousness that come from what we would say the earth, more or less. Sometimes it's raw firm, or like ayahuasca brew with 2 plants. Yeah. Okay. But ayahuasca itself, as we see with many others, particularly like peyote in San Pedro, they have what they call emetic effects, meaning that probably 70%, 50 to 70% of people who consume ayahuasca are going to be purging very violently afterwards. And for the shamans and for the people who practice, that's an energetic purge more so, or just as much as it is an actual physical manifestation of a purge. And it's, for the religious practitioner, it's invited. They're like, let's get this out of me. For someone who's doing it recreationally, that's not going to be their first choice of DMT consumption.
Fuck no, I don't want to throw up.
Yeah, or doing mescaline, because the cactuses are the same way. Less people throw up per se on cactus, but you feel it in your stomach. You're like, oh man, like it's horribly bitter and like ugh.
I had to do in April. I got gastric sleeve done, and for the first month I couldn't really eat anything super crazy. I had to. It was mainly like a liquid diet. Dude, when I started being able to eat regular stuff, I like tried to eat the same shit that I would normally eat that got me to be almost 400 pounds. And I threw up probably on the first time I had a really bad experience. I ate a hamburger, didn't even eat the bun, just ate the hamburger, and it was grilled on a, literally grilled, just the meat bun, grilled on a charcoal grill, and the char upset my stomach so much. I threw up probably like 15 times that day. Never again did I want to experience that level of vomiting.
Oh yeah,
you had your own purge.
Yeah,
right
yeah. So like with ayahuasca,
I purged.
Your recreational use is probably going to be limited to one time. If you didn't already know, you'll know then. That's not especially with ayahuasca, it's not the way you want to take it. And this is my personal beliefs. There's plant spirits, man, and they demand reverence and respect. And if you do, they'll reward you. But if you don't, you're putting it's a gamble. Yeah, crapshoot.
That's the perfect segue, to wrap it up. Greg, for people that are looking to find out more about ayahuasca and the positive benefits that it can have, where do you think they should go? Where do you think they should go seek their information?
Oh, I mean, there's so many sources. I mean, just from the amount of academic studies that have been done, documentaries.
You have a Patreon.
I do. Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah. Patreon. It's patreon.com/George Greg, Greg, just one Greg, one G at the end of Greg. Lake, Lake.
Ladies and gents, we're plugging it right there.
Well, I haven't plugged it. And then I have Entheo.law is my website with, my paid materials, I guess you'd say. My Patreon's, as long as you sign up for a membership, which is free, most of my videos on there, I would say 90% are for members. So you can, for free, look at my videos, but obviously any, help, assistance in whatever manner would be greatly appreciated.
Well, look, man, I hope we can, do this again and do some more videos with you. I think you great host. I'd love to have you on again and we do some more work.
Yeah. And thank y'all. I'm very grateful to be here today. It's my first time meeting Mike and the team here, and it's incredible. I hope we do many, many more. And thank y'all.
Thank you.
No, Greg, thank you. And guys, thanks again for tuning in to another episode sponsored by Kraken Law Group. If you guys have any suggestions for stuff that you'd like for us to discuss in a future episode, please leave them in the comments below. And until next time.